Okay, now we go to the Palestine war between Palestine and Israel. So we can see what's really influenced by media and the effect of media to the war. Okay, open up a newspaper and changes you will read something about the Israel and Palestine conflict. The current conflict between the Israelis and the Palestinians has become one of the most widely reported conflicts in the world today. It also happens to be one of the famous, complicated and divisive. Why has this conflict between two small terrorism in the Levant region exploded into a huge global issue? A possible answer could lie in the media coverage of the conflict. The continuous coverage of the conflict has left it in the public as those elevating its perceived importance. The Israel and Palestine conflict has sparked protests all around the world. Millions of people are emotionally charged by the conflict due to a multitude of reasons, from religion to human rights. The media has capitalized on people's emotion concerning the conflict by increasing coverage. The increased coverage leads to more people seeing what is going on in Israel and thus increasing its relative importance in their minds. This can be understood by the psychological phenomenon known as the availability heuristic. The availability heuristic is defined by psychologist Daniel Kahneman as the tendency to assess the relative importance of issues by the ease with which they are retrieved from a memory. According to availability heuristic, in a piece of information can be recalled quickly, then a person will be more likely to believe it is so important. In terms of the Israel and Palestine conflict, with the media's regular reporting on the conflict, it is often the forefront of our mind, which make it easier for us to retrieve information about it. When information regarding the conflict is recalled easily, it will seem to be important than information that may not come to mind as quickly. I experienced the availability heuristic phenomena during the Gaza-Israel clashes of 2012. There was daily media coverage of the rockets being fired into Israel and the subsequent Israel retaliation. Also during this period, I witnessed many pro-Palestinian marches in my hometown, Los Angeles. These protesters were influenced by the availability heuristic. The protest took place because the Israeli violence was fresh in minds of the public. During periods of relatively little news about the Israel and Palestine conflict, I will assume there will be fewer protests, thus proving the availability heuristic to be correct. There are many reasons why the media, and especially media in the United States, will be so focused on Israel. One possible reason is that Israel is a holy place to the three major religions: Islam, Christian, and Judaism. Many individuals practicing those three religions pay attention to Israel because they feel personally connected to it. When Israel or the Israeli-Palestine conflict is in the news, people may become very emotional because of what Israel means to them. When people become emotionally attached to a news story, they may be more likely to tune it. Based on this, the religion's significance of Israel could factor into heavy media focus. Another reason why American media companies may have increased focus on Israel-Palestine conflict is due to the deep connection between Israel and the United States. The United States gives Israel $3.15 billion a year, easily the most aid provided by United States. Because the United States give a large amount of aid to Israel, the American media wants to pay extra attention to Israel. Because the Israel-Palestine conflict sparks so much emotion from different religious and social groups, the media is likely to increase coverage which elevates the perceived importance of the conflict. This does not mean that the Israel-Palestine conflict is not important, but the media consistent coverage of it has elevated its relative importance in our mind. The media knows that conflict and violence sparks viewership, which is why many of the year's biggest news stories involve violence. When rockets start flying, the 24/7 news cycle is quick to pounce. When this happens, the world attention will once again be turned to the Lebanon and the Israel-Palestine conflict. Monopolies or media. Thank you. That's all for the Palestine and Israel. So thank you.